All right, this is a video for the Volvelle. So I supplied you guys with a handout for circles. The Volvelle, I think you guys know, is that circular binding like this, and it's usually put together with a brad like that flays out in the back, but I'm going to show you how to make one with a piece of paper, a little strip of paper and string thread to make a brad. So the first thing you're going to do is you need to cut out these circles. For our first demonstration, at least, we're going to just do the handout. And of course, again, you could put this on top of a heavier sheet of paper, but I'm going to show you how to do that with either things around the house that you can trace and make shapes with, or you can use the circle cutter, the Olfa circle cutter here, which is, I'm going to demonstrate that as part of this video as well. The first thing you're going to do, though, for our first step in this process is to cut out these circles. So I'm going to start with the large one. Let's read what I wrote here. It said, cut out each circle and punch a small hole at the center mark. So actually, I'm going to do that first with my awl. There's a little dot, and I'm just going to pierce through at that point on it. And I'm going to do it on the other ones as well. Before I proceed to cutting out the shapes. And so you can use scissors if that's how you feel comfortable cutting a circle. I'm going to go ahead and just do it with an X-Acto. And I'm really just going to follow along the line. Like this, and then just rotate as I go. Oops, little bobble there, but that's okay. This is our mock-up. So again, don't have to be perfect. Okay, there's one. So, oh, I forgot to say, these circles are 6, 4, and 2 inches across diameter. So here's my second one, the 4-inch. Oh, wow, okay. Trying to do it too fast and getting ahead, but there's no reason, there's nothing to get ahead of here. Just do it as you do it. Okay. And then the smaller they get, I think they're harder to do with an X-Acto because the angle is steep. Okay, so that's our circles cut. And now we got to put it together. So, since we don't have a brad, I'm going to use a piece of thread and a little scrap of paper. So all I did was just took a little piece of paper. I literally just tore like a little strip like that. And then I just twisted it into a little length. You could probably also use another piece of thread. You could use a little piece of like a toothpick. You just need something that's going to lay across the top like that. And you want to be able to tie over it. This one's wider than I like, so I'm going to do this one. And I could also cut this, like once I get it where I want it, I could cut that and make like a little stem. That's what I need, is just like a little twisted stem, if you can see that. And then I need a piece of thread, and that's going to come through. So let's see, I need to start in the back and come through. And I actually might put my needle on, because I feel like I could do it better with a point and not try to just get it through those holes. So I'm going to put this little, the length of thread is what, 5 inches? 5 or 6 inches, 5 inches is fine. You just need a little piece. And if you don't have your thread yet, you can use any kind of string for this, but you might need a larger needle if you're using like yarn or something. But just play around with this and figure out. And if you're really interested in the brads, I just couldn't supply them for the class. I can send you a link to that. And they have them at Michael's and at Joann and things like this, like craft stores. Okay, so I just threaded on to the needle from starting with the large one forward to the small one. So the needle is just sitting on there like this. I haven't pulled the thread through yet. So now I'm going to pull that thread through. Okay, and then I'm going to lay this little piece on there. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a loop. So I'm going to kind of hold the tail. Whoops, almost. Oh, I did pull it all the way through. Shoot. All right, let me go through back through again. Stack them on. So don't do that. Don't pull it all the way through. You need to leave a little tail so that you can tie. So you want to pull through and then hold on to it for a second and then push it back through again. But you don't want to pull all the way through. So here's the trick. So that's what I've got, the loop, and there's a little bit of the tail from where it's on the needle. And in the back, I'm holding on to that thread. And then what I'm going to do is put that little stem in there, and then I can tighten that down. And so then I can kind of take my finger and adjust it so that it's centered, and then pull it tight. And then I've got just the tail on the back. So this is how this looks. There's a little piece of thread over the top there. It's just like a little loop. And then in the back is where I'm going to tie a knot. So I want to tie this, but I don't want to tie it too tight. I still want it to be able to, this stuff to be able to move. So I'm going to tie it, you know, I don't know how to explain it. It's going to tie a knot. And it's like a gentle, I'm not pulling hard because I think it would rip the paper, but it needs to be firm enough to hold that in place so that that little stem is not sliding around. So I'm going to tie a double knot. So I tied left over right, and around. I'm going to do it again. And then I'll tie right over left. That's a square knot. So then the right side over the left side and around. That just makes a square knot that's probably not going to come untied. And then I can leave that in the back. This is our mock-up again. So now I can make this little thing rotate. And this works like a brad. It's like a handmade brad. So if you can think of other things that you'd like to use for your stem, that's fine. I've used pieces of wood, like I said, like a little toothpick that I broke off and used that. You just need something stiff, and then you need this loop to go over to make your little handmade brad. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate how to do it with the circle cutter and how to find some items to trace that you could use in the house to get different. You can use different shapes. You can just find a bunch of different circular items in the house to trace. So I'm going to do both of those things, but I'm going to pause the recording and come back with the paper to do that. All right, so I found some objects in my house that I just happen to have that are different shapes, not circular. I just thought it might be interesting to see, you know, some different things. You don't have to make circles if you decide to make the Volvelle. And I also got out a pack of these brads, but I'll get to that when I am putting this together. So I've got 3 different colors of paper. Get my needle over to the side here so I don't lose it. I'm going to go ahead and thread it because I'm going to do that again with the brad. I mean, with the handmade brad. So I just set that over. Okay, I have 3 different colors of paper. I'm going to start with the smallest thing. This is just a can, and I'm going to trace this can to make my circle. So I'm just going to put it on the edge of my piece of paper. Get up into the frame a little bit better. Like this. And then I'm just going to take my pencil and trace around the can. I'm going to make sure that it left a mark with the lead out on this. So it's kind of messy. I'm going to turn it over and try again because this is sloppy. The can is tapered, and so I'm having a little bit of a hard time tracing that. So I've got another cup over here. And I'm going to do that instead because it's a better edge. Yeah, because of that taper, I was like sliding back and forth. So yeah, that's better. You can see that circle. And now this is one of the times I am going to just use scissors for this so I can cut inside of my line. And here's the thing too, you don't have to have some real clean edge either. So I'm just cutting that out. And then I could make like, show you an example of like different things you can do. You could make like a little zigzag edge. So I'm just looking at my line, the edge of my circle. I'm making a little, like a starburst with it. I mean, sometimes things like that are more interesting and they also kind of free you up. So I would cut on this side and then use that as the top because some of the pencil lines are showing. But I could always try to make a straight circle as well. And then if I'm not good at that, I could always kind of wobble it out, you know, make a little wavy line. So don't feel like if you're doing it imperfect, you know, if it's not a perfect circle, that it's just, it can't be done, because that's not true. And then, you know, maybe just try to find the center of that, put it on your board. That center. So I went ahead and punched my hole. Okay, so there's that first one. This is just to show you like a looser way. And then these other pieces I've got are more regular. I don't know, I can actually follow an edge here. This might be a little tricky, this piece, because it's soft. It's kind of got a soft edge on it, but that's what I'm going to do. And you could also, if you were really wanting to be strict about it and have perfect pieces, you could also use like the product box to cut yourself some templates. And you could also use your product box for your Volvelle if that's what you'd like to do. Okay, and there's that. Now this one's easier to use the X-Acto and a straight edge to cut it. So for that, I could just do, when I'm cutting inside my pencil line, just a tiny bit, just inside it. So I'd probably be able to use either side for this. Get this out of the way. And then cut the rest of those. And you could also measure to find your center as well, because I didn't do that. I don't do that a lot. Like I'll just kind of eyeball it, but if you want it to be exactly perfectly centered, you would need to find the center of that. This is what I do a lot on my mat, is I'll kind of equidistant, you know, place it on here. And so that's my center vertically. Oops, there's my pencil. Oh, okay. So this is my center. Well, you can kind of see that there. And then do the same thing with this part. If you see what I'm doing, I'm just using my mat and making the distance the same here around the, using the grid to kind of position the piece, and then equidistant on this side. And then where those cross, and this is where I'm kind of eyeballing it. It's like here and here, and it's like right there is the center. So I use my mat all the time for stuff like that, especially when I'm making one that's kind of a mock-up. Okay, so there's the two. And then for this last one, get my pieces out of the way. I need this color paper. And of course you can use the same color paper. You can use two colors. You can use whatever combination of stuff you want to do. You know, and I don't have to trace this. I could just measure out a square, but since I've got it out, I'm just going to do it like that. Oh gosh, I'm going to put it on my computer. It's a weight. I don't want to do that. So, big old piece of paper. So bad about leaving my tools. That's why I love this tray, because it does help get them out of the way. At least I have somewhere to throw them. You know, I'll just, to make this square, I'm just going to, now I'm going to use my triangle to kind of clean it up. And I'll cut about half of it here. And then I can come here and I'll put the tip of the X-Acto in, and I'm just squaring it up where I cut it. And then I can pull the rest of that cut. That's that. And again, here I could, if I wanted to just clean it up, it's really pretty square. Not bad. Let's see. I'm using the grid to just kind of look. Maybe it's off a little bit here. So I'll just clean that up. Go down here. This is getting pretty straight, so, and I'm just using my grid here to do that, to straighten it up. And then again, I'll do my little quick way of measuring the center, finding the center. And things don't, they could also be offset when you make your volvelle. They don't have to be perfectly aligned, you know, like I could punch a hole here and here and have a piece that's like that, and that's where it rotates. You know, it doesn't have to be centered. I mean, it's kind of cool to be symmetrical. It's nice to see that. It's what we like, but it doesn't have to be that. I want one of these heavy lines to be my center, so I'm now gonna readjust this so that that's what's happening. If that makes sense to you guys, I think you see what I'm doing. I'm just using the heavier line to help me position. So it's this, that. I just look. Yeah, let me do it. So here I could do stuff like could round my corner. Just kind of do it by hand too. Or if you have a corner rounder, great, go for it. This is not necessary. I'm just kind of relaxing and feeling like, oh, I want to play around. So anyway, this is my Volvelle. And now I'm going to show you these brads. Okay, so this is what I normally use. It's this brand, and I've seen this at Joann. Mini brads. These are just real tiny. You don't have to get them this small. But I love these little things. They're like $5 maybe for a little box of 200. And they're really tiny. Great for this. So I just pulled one out. Barely see this little baby like that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and kind of feel for that little separation there. But I'm going to thread this through. So it goes through the small to the large, because that's the top, is the kind of the nail head. And then, and this one clearly has no content, you know, this is just in colors. And then I just flay out that brad like that. And then that's going to be my little Volvelle. So, you know, you can think about when you're making a Volvelle. Oh, this is not centered. Uh-oh, it's the end of the world. I guess my trick didn't work very well, but you know, you can think about when you're making a Volvelle, what is underneath and what you might want to show. And this is where I'm going to take this apart again to show you this. And then I'm going to show you one more thing with the cutting tool, and then we can go make them. This is where that Japanese screw punch comes in really handy, and it's really fun. So you could, let me get a bigger bit. My little set of bits. So I've got a 2.5 millimeter in there, and that's pretty small. So I'm going to switch it for like a 5. So I'm very careful with these bits. I don't want to lose them, and they will get rusted if you don't keep them. Well, at least in Florida, they will. If you don't keep them in their plastic bags. So that's why I have this little system of, that looks crazy, but it's very helpful. Well, right now, all I can see is this 4.5. So I'm going to use that one. That's larger. So if that's what I've got out, I actually have my little way where I tuck that bag in there just to keep up with my stuff. And then put that in so you can see the 4.5, like that. And now I could, you know, this is the top one. So if I screw punch down in a couple of spots, and if I screw punch on these edges, so this is just for playing around and figuring out what you might do, but think about what Volvelles do. You can do things like we did with the Exquisite Corpse, where you can line up edges and create figures and letters and different things at the edges and build at the edge like that. Or you can do things like this where you hide and reveal information. And this is kind of a small version of what you might think about, but you can imagine, like, if you had color underneath these circles, what that might do. Have places where you can line things up and create words and sentences. You can do things like that. So think about what's hidden and what's revealed and how that works. And then things like, you know, shapes that might be created when you line up the edges of the Volvelle. Okay, so that's that. And now I'm going to demonstrate using that cutter tool to make your circles, the Olfa circle cutter, which is just a really handy tool. Highly recommended. It's not very expensive. It's under $10. And it's just really, really handy. So I'm going to demonstrate that as well. Okay. I'm gonna pause for a second and come back. All right, one more thing with the Volvelle. So this is the Olfa circle cutter, and I'm gonna use this to just cut some circles and kind of just demonstrate how this tool works. So if I wanna cut a 6-inch circle, I need to set this compass to 3 inches. So I can do that just using my mat, and I can just line up the blade so you can see that there's a blade here. And then this is the center of the compass that slides back and forth. And this is just a little screw that tightens down. So I'm going to set this on my mat and just line it up where the blade is on one line and then 3 inches over. And then I tighten that down. Okay, so the blade has a direction and you want to follow that blade direction. You don't want to be pulling it this way. You want to push or pull with the angle of the blade. That makes sense. So that the knife is going in the direction of the slope of the blade. All right, so when I get my piece of paper, I just need to make sure I've got room. So I just kind of lightly set it on and make sure I've got enough room to get 6 inches on there. It's close right here, but I think that's okay. So then I'm going to push the compass into the center and then check that I'm pulling in the right direction. And then what I do is I kind of push my hand on top of this thing, and then I'm using pressure at the blade. I need to keep it in place. So I'm kind of using the center of my hand or the palm of my hand for that part, and then using my fingers to push the blade into the paper. And I'm kind of doing it at an angle because the blade is at an angle. And then I'm trying, you know, you need a good new blade, and it comes with some changeable blades, but sometimes these things get dull pretty quickly. And I'm sitting down. Honestly, it works better if you're standing up because you can get some force behind it. So it was skipping around a little bit here. Probably time to change this blade. But if I keep it in place, I can kind of go back and correct any place that it didn't cut. And that cut all the way through. But sometimes you'll miss a spot. And if I do that and it's getting off and it's making a mess, I'll just stop, pull the blade out, and take my X-Acto and just go in and clean up any little edge that wasn't cleanly cut. So it's not, you know, don't panic. And it takes a couple of tries, you know, practice a couple times, maybe use some just copy paper to practice on before you get to your real piece, if you decide to buy one of these, because it does take a little bit of practice to get used to how to operate this thing. Okay, so there's my 6-inch circle, and then I will do a 4. So then I'm going to set this to 2 inches. That's the radius of the circle. Maybe I'm slightly less than 2 there, but that's okay. I'll set that over to the side for a moment. Again, just trying to save paper here, so I'm going to where I've already cut. That's not enough room. And you can change the direction of this blade if you prefer to pull, which I kind of do, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to change this blade so that it's a pull instead of a push, because I was having a hard time. So all that is I'm going to pull this apart. There's just a little screw holding that in, and I want the blade to go the other direction, so I'm just going to rotate it like that. And then it just goes right back into place. This is very simple. You probably can't see what I'm doing, but it's not that hard to do. You'll see how to do it. Yes, so now I can pull towards me. I'm going to try at least and see if that feels more comfortable. So I've got enough room here, got enough room here. So I'm ready to go. I push down, and then, I mean, at some point I am going to have to push it because I don't want to take the compass out. But I don't know, that just feels better to me to do it that way. So here's a little place where I can see it came out. So I'll show you that little step if I need to come in with my X-Acto, and it's really light usually that I need to do that. So yeah, you can use an X-Acto if you need to. Just don't panic about it, and you're probably going to be all right. Okay, so there's the 2, the 6 and the 4, and now I'm going to do the 2 with that pink paper. And then my 2-inch, I'm going to set this to 1. Approximately, it's a little larger. And then I just need to make sure I got room. And sometimes I will do stuff where I'll leave kind of a flat edge because it's interesting to do things like even this might be cool. Make a little mouth with an angle, you know. But for our purposes, I'm just going to do a regular circle for right now. So I just make sure I've got room. Move my hand. Above and below, that I'm on the paper when I'm cutting. That's real close. So I'm going to back up just a tiny bit. Yeah. Okay, then I push the compass in and I pull around like that. Again, standing up feels better. Oh, the compass came out. No. Still do it. Kind of got messy. So that one, I don't like it. So I'll just cut another one. Just testing before. It's because I stood up in the middle. Should have stood up the whole time. Okay. All right. Now got our 3. And I'm going to show you that again with a little twisted piece. This is actually string or thread that I folded up and twisted together. So I'm going to use that. And this I've got to start from the back. Bring my needle through. It's like I'm just stacking everything at first. The great thing about that tool is it punches a hole. So that's ready. The bad thing about it is you kind of can't do content, ouch, with it. You can, but you got to plan ahead for that. Like you might, maybe if you printed something out from a printer, the imagery or whatever you have going on, you would make the outline so that you could cut inside of it and it wouldn't be printed. You know, even though it's printed to guide you, you would set the compass so that it would print or it would cut inside of that line, if that makes sense. So there's things you can do to use that circle cutter because it is really clean and neat. And so it's helpful in that way. You don't have to hand cut because it's going to be neater because it's a true circle. I lost the holes. I got out of alignment. Hold on. Pull this back together a little bit. Because as I was talking and trying to hold them and I lost the alignment. Okay. All right, so all I'm doing now is I pulled through the front and now I'm going to go back through, but I'm making that little loop. And I can go ahead and just pull that excess through so I can just see that loop. That kind of helps. So all that's there is the loop, and on the back is just the tails, the needle still on there. And then I can put this piece in, kind of hold it in position and pull. So you could incorporate this into your piece. You know, I'm thinking of things you could do. You could like use something heavy and make like a little arrow or something. You could make it kind of part of the design. And that might be interesting to do. You could use a bead, maybe. I don't know. I tend not to like things that are going to flop around. And so I think that something like this is a little bit better. But then you just tie the knot in the back. And that's going to be your brad. So this is just to show you the Olfa cutter. Again, this is not a required piece for this class, but it is a nice tool to know about, a nice tool to know how to use. And you can use whatever process you want to cut your volvelle if that's the structure that you decide to use. All right, there you go. Thanks.